Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1638B, and today's date is August 14th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Deep State Intelligence is Not Going to Be Happy About What Just Happened. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as we know, Peter Strzok, he was fired from the FBI, and the media right now is reporting that Peter Strzok was fired for his anti-Trump text messages, and they're putting it out there, and this is the reason why Strzok was fired. Well, this wasn't the reason. They're just putting this out there as propaganda. We need to go back a little bit in time here. In June, the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, referred Strzok's findings to the Office of Professional Responsibility for investigation and possible disciplinary action. So why was Peter Strzok fired? Well, the newly released Carter Page FISA docs revealed that Peter Strzok provided information which was used to obtain a FISA warrant on Carter Page, directly contradicting his sworn claims to the GOP lawmakers. During Peter Strzok's closed-door testimony with GOP lawmakers in mid-July, he swore he was not involved in the drafting of the Carter Page FISA warrant, nor did he provide any evidence or information to the FISC. Now, Strzok said he provided really nothing and he gave no input on the application. He didn't supply any evidence for it and was not involved in presenting it to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for approval. And he said he had nothing really to do with it. But the documents reveal that Peter Strzok used Carter Page's September 2016 letter to Comey as a pretext to open investigation on him. Now, the head of the Office of Professional Responsibility is run by a woman named Candace Will. She was appointed to run the OPR in 2004 by then FBI Director Robert Mueller. So maybe that's why the OPR recommended Peter Strzok only be suspended and demoted rather than fired. Remember, the swamp always protects their own. So the real reason why he was fired was because he lied to Congress. Now, we see that the FISA memo, this looks like it was given to the press. It looks like the SSCI, this is the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, they all had the unredacted copy of the FISA. Even the mainstream media, it was leaked out there. And it looks like all these individuals knew what it said. And the latest evidence comes from Chairman Burr defending the corrupt FISA application that was used against U.S. person Carter Page. The motives for Burr's duplicity here are obvious. The entire apparatus of the media has avoided the explosive revelation of the unredacted FISA application being delivered to the committee on March 17, 2017, because the consequences from admitting the truth are catastrophic to the ongoing narrative. The committee requested and received the FISA application on March 17, 2017. On the same day, the indicted security staffer for the committee, James Wolfe, leaked the 82-page application in a series of 82 photographic text messages, one picture per page, to his reporter, Ali Walken. Why would Wolfe take pictures of fully redacted pages? He wouldn't. So that implies it is likely this March 17, 2017 copy was not heavily redacted at all, that he was taking pictures of the unredacted FISA application. And it was given to the mainstream media, to the Senate Select Committee, which is completely corrupt. And when we look at this, we can see the House Judiciary Committee, Goodlatte, Nunes, Grassley. Well, they had to demand and threaten to sue the Department of Justice in December, January, February of 2018 to see it. Why the difference in compliance? So the suspicion is that someone within the IC likely ODNI Dan Coates and NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers, knew the Senate Intelligence Committee was fully compromised, and they used the March 17, 2017 copy production as bait in their successful leak hunt, ultimately culminating in the indictment of Wolf. And this March 17, 2017 date of this copy most likely was changed, and the original date, October 21st, 2016, was probably the real date, which was then approved by the judge Rosemary Collier. So we can see that there's a lot of things happening with all this, and when you start stripping everything away and you start looking at all the evidence, you can see what has been going on here, and more and more of the evidence is coming out. Now, Jim Jordan, this is Representative Jim Jordan, he kind of summed this all up. Stroke fired today, never forget. And he tweeted this out. Director Comey fired. Deputy Director McCabe fired. Chief Counsel Baker demoted, left. Chief of Staff Ribicki left. FBI Counsel Page demoted, then left. Department Director of Counter Intel Stroke demoted, fired. Never seen a federal agency where that's happened. Why do you think this is happening? Because all these individuals are corrupt. All these individuals were behind the FISA memo, the dossier, and everything else that you've been seeing. And I'm sure they're behind a lot more than we even know of. Now, Rudy Giuliani, he dropped another bomb. And he says the guy running the spy ring on Trump was John Brennan. He said he should be in front of a grand jury. Now, of course, we kind of all knew this. And I notice what's happening here. They're letting bits and pieces out of all of it that we've been talking about for a very long time. So the public starts to understand what is happening here. Now, of course, the mainstream media is not reporting on this, but they're trying to get this message out as best as possible. Now, as we know, the deep state, they still have security clearance. And Q confirmed this in Post 1336, which we'll go over in a minute. This was back in May 10th of 2018. And remember when it came out that Trump might strip these deep state intelligence agents of their security clearance. And all of them started to scream and yell and say this isn't fair and whatever else they said. They didn't like it. And when we look through all the different Q posts, we notice that Q never names McCain by his name. Q always uses no name, like no name absent, no name in Syria, no name panic. So keep no name, which is John McCain, in your mind right now, because there was a bill that was signed today, and it's the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2019. But H.R. 5515 is called the John S. McCain National Defense Authorization Act. And that's kind of odd. Why would you put John S. McCain on there? I think this was done on purpose, because when you start to read this and you go to section 542, it says security clearance reinvestigation of certain personnel who commit certain offenses. Section 1564 of Title 10 United States Code is amended, and it lists all different offenses: sexual assault, sexual harassment, fraud against the United States, any other violation that the Secretary determines renders that individuals susceptible to blackmail or raises serious concern regarding the ability of that individual to hold a security clearance. Determination by a commanding officer that the individual has committed an offense described in subparagraph A. An individual described in this paragraph, an individual who has security clearance and is a flag officer, a general officer, an employee of the Department of Defense in the senior executive service. And it goes on and on and on. So now we need to go back to Post 1336, which is May 10th, and think about why no name was put on the top of this bill. Now remember, we talked about this for quite a while. Those people who have been listening to the X22 understand this. Whenever a bill comes out or something comes out, it always means the opposite. Patriot Act always means the opposite. Affordable Care Act, it always means the opposite. Every time they come out with something, it's always the opposite. So they put on top John McCain. Now, we know he's a traitor. We know he's a neocon. We know that he's a bad dude and he's not trustworthy. He doesn't have honor. It means the opposite. Think about that for a second. Now, let's go on to post 1336. In this post, it says, example, Clinton Foundation. Selling secrets, selling future access, selling silence. Read below slow and carefully. 5I. Why do former dignitaries still hold SEC clearance? U.S. to U.S., logged flag recorded. U.S. in New Zealand, no logs, no flags, no records. U.S. security clearance, authorization 5I view plus doc take. Read above, slow and carefully. Why do we allow former dignitaries security clearance? Welcome to the deep state. Future to prove past. No name was not mentioned in any of the posts, and no name was placed on the top of this bill because it would bring trust to the bill. It would bring value to the bill. It would get through and be passed. And I believe this was the reason to get that section in the NDAA through so they can start removing security clearance. Now, once they start removing security clearance from these individuals, and of course they have to meet one of these sections, it will make it even more difficult for them to gain information. And I think this is all being done on purpose. And again, if we read this, future to prove past. And we're seeing it happen right now. Now, we see that all the social media channels, they are sites, they're trying to basically shut down free speech, trying to shut up many individuals. And the question is why? Why are they trying to censor so many people, so many alternative sites? Well, we have the midterms coming up, and that's one reason. I think we also have the drop of the unredacted reports that are going to be declassified, and they know what's in them already, and they're trying to prepare for this. And we're already seeing the mainstream media try to build this up. We see Alex Jones and many others have been dropped from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Apple, and the rest. We see articles coming out in the mainstream media saying that, you know, those views that you see on YouTube from different, channels, well, those views might not be their real views, and not as many people are listening to them as you might think. And they go into this whole story about people using these bots to drive their views up. And it seems like they're trying to make it look like that anyone that, except for the corporate media and those people that are reporting what they want out there, anyone else, they're using bots, and this is why they have the view counts as high as they are. And YouTube right now, and they've been cracking down on this for quite a while. This is nothing new. This has been around for a very long time. You have to go out and you have to purchase these bots. Companies do sell them, and YouTube normally finds it out very, very quickly. They can tell that it's completely fake, phony, and false, and they shut down the channel right away. But I believe why they're putting this out there is they're trying to convince everyone that certain channels, they're getting all these views because it's not real people. And, if you see something with 20,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 views, it's really not a lot of views compared to, some of the others that are, 500,000 or 1 million and things like that. But they want you to think, and they're trying to convince the public that these channels really don't have these views. We see Twitter right now, they're going to be suspending accounts for trying to evade suspension. Now, Twitter has banned, Alex Jones, Peter Van Buren, Candace Owen, Ron Paul Institute, and many others. And Jack Dorsey has a plan to get rid of the rest. And their plan is to suspend you for trying not to be suspended. I mean, this just seems absolutely ridiculous. And they want you to prove why your channel should come back and that you didn't break the rules, instead of the other way around, where they're supposed to prove that you did break the rules and that's why they took your channel down. So it's going to make it completely impossible for anyone to prove anything. Now, Nigel Farage, he kind of summed it all up here. He wrote an op-ed last Tuesday. He's the former UKIP leader. And he said, while many on the libertarian right and within the conservative movement have their issues with Alex Jones and InfoWars, this week's announcement by YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Spotify represents a concerted effort of a proscription and censorship that could just as soon see any of us confined to the dustbin of social media history. He concludes that the real interference in U.S. democracy comes not from Russia, but from some of its most powerful corporations, which now yield more power in some cases than government itself. And I would add on to that, there are certain individuals within the deep state that are also doing this. And we can see that people are starting to realize what is going on here, and we're seeing censorship right in front of our eyes here. We see Iran's supreme leader. He is out there and he is addressing the people, saying that there's going to be no war, nor will there be negotiations with the U.S. And he went on to say that negotiations with a highly demanding regime and a bullying one like the U.S. are not a tool to decrease hostility. Negotiation is not a tool to lessen hostilities within the U.S., but negotiation is a tool in its hands to impose hostility. And we can see right now there's no war. And to me, it seems like if the U.S. can change their ways, Iran would be open to some type of negotiation. We see out in Syria is starting to rebuild the Damascus-Dara highway. And it looks like they're opening their borders with Jordan to allow the refugees back into the country. They're allowing food, tents, mobile medical clinics. And it seems like it is game over for the terrorists in that country. And it looks like the Syrian armed forces, they are making their last offensive to push the terrorists out of Idlib. And once the north is free, guess what? Game over. Let's move on to Q's post right now. We're going to move on to Q's post 1861, August 13th. Q put up more tweets by Rainn Wilson. He was on The Office. He's also a director. And again, this is showing how sick these individuals are. You can read them on the X22. I'm not going to go over all the tweets. And Q down below says, normal, the more you know. And then there was something else there. This was a temple, and it wrote, an anonymous 4chan user recently posted new photos of Jeffrey Epstein's infamous Pedo Island. The island features a temple atop a small mountain and has been the location of several underage sex parties arranged by Epstein and attended by several of the world's elite, including ex-President Bill Clinton, his wife Hillary Clinton, Hollywood actors, and even members of the world's royal families. Q wrote, normal. And again, this is kind of odd here. Now, if we take what Q is saying and we move this into this story about this investigative journalist who was found dead in D.C. in a hotel room, this individual, Jen Moore, she was an investigative journalist, was looking into reports that Bill Clinton was raping a boy. And this individual has been talking to Jen Moore about this. Now, Moore died of an apparent seizure. Police are closely investigating the cause of death, and former FBI agent Robin Gritz, a friend of Moore's, made inquiries with homicide detectives Monday afternoon in Prince George's County, Maryland. Preliminary reports from police said the death was not the result of suicide. Moore's body was found by employees at the Country Inn and Suites by Radisson in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol Heights of Maryland. The investigation is ongoing right now. Now, Moore, an advocate who investigated abuse and trafficked children, had been in the process of investigating allegations by a 26-year-old man that as a young boy, he was sexually assaulted by Bill Clinton and pimped out as a private sex parties attended by other D.C. elites. In fact, just 4 weeks before her death, Moore filed details of the alleged victim's claims with the Department of Homeland Security, detailing the allegations against Clinton. Moore contacted Homeland Security beginning on July 6th through July 9th. This is what the records show. A week later, she contacted the FBI with the identical details about the victim and the shocking allegations against Clinton. Now, Moore had approached True pundit Thomas Paine in June with the allegations against Clinton. Paine conducted a series of face-to-face interviews with Moore and the alleged victim in various locales. Paine and True Pundit were vetting the details provided by the victim. Paine said the allegations were credible and the victim's testimony and details were beyond convincing. Paine said Moore accepted the risk with the story and understood things could get very ugly very fast. Now, let's take a look at what has been going on here. Moore was very worried about the victim because he was the first to break the ice, and this is coming from Paine. There were others waiting to tell their stories, but he was the catalyst. Did she think she could be harmed? Absolutely. This woman was fearless, absolute warrior, a former cop, and I don't think she was afraid of anyone or anything. Now, according to the interviews, the victim in the case claimed he was sexually assaulted by Clinton on a yacht in New England and knows the identities of several other children victims who were subjected to identical abuses. The victim also confirmed he witnessed other children and people being sexually and physically abused and possibly worse on numerous occasions on these boat parties. These parties were attended by elite members of D.C. political class, according to Moore and the victim. Both young boys, young girls, the victim said. And Moore supplied these details to federal agents and documented the interactions with a number of alleged victims. Within a month, she was dead. And we know the history with the Clintons. Anyone that tries to cross them and do anything, it seems like these people always end up dead. Let's move on to post 1862. This is August 13th. Q put up a picture of the 1933 paramilitary wing of the Communist Party of Germany, and right next to it is the 2017 paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party of America, Antifa. And under this, Q wrote, "Fake news, in all caps, equals enemy of the people. If all directions of the echo chamber mainstream media state the same thing, even if fiction, false, do most people then consider it true, factual? Direct communication is critical. Who controls the fake news? Why is Antifa allowed to incite violence, wear masks, make threats, carry weapons, and physically harm others who oppose their ideology? Why does Antifa attempt to justify such violence by labeling the challenger as alt-right or Nazi? Why doesn't the left condone such acts as violence and call for an immediate end? Define projection, define insurance policy, define warning against attempts to unveil. They prey on emotionally unstable, helpless individuals and use them as pawns." And then Q gave a link to Fox News. And the article is FBI probe Antifa ideology underway, Ray tells House panel. Why does Ray know, and when will he release to the public? Does such violence, extremism justify National Guard deployment in the future ahead of planned public releases? Gave another link, Breitbart. Big government, left-wing Antifa terrorists freaking out over proposed unmasking law. Another link, a petition at the White House. Formally recognize Antifa terrorist organization as terrorists. Military spending bill. Smile for the camera. Q. Now on CNN, Chris Cuomo was out there and he was trying to normalize the domestic terrorism and actually trying to stick up for Antifa, saying they were in the right because they're fighting hate. I mean, that was the whole thing that he was trying to convey, that it's okay if you're fighting hate. And we can see that CNN is backing Antifa now. Many of the mainstream media channels, they're going to be pushing Antifa, and they're not going to come out and say, hey, we back Antifa. They're going to say it's okay if you're fighting hate, and they're going to, make some type of report of why it's okay, because when you're battling hate, you have to take extreme measures into your own hands. But Q is pointing to this petition that is on the White House site. formally recognize Antifa as a terrorist organization. It needs 100,000 signatures. It already has 368,000 signatures. Now, what the corporate media probably doesn't realize is that they're violating federal law by aiding a domestic terrorist group. U.S. Code, subsection 239A. The term material support or resources means any property, tangible or intangible, or service, including currency or monetary instruments or financial securities, financial services, lodging, training, expert advice or assistance, safe houses, false documentation or identification, communication equipment, facilities, weapons, lethal substance, explosive, personnel, one or more individuals who may be or include oneself, and transportation, except medicine or religious materials. And from this, you can see that this is supporting Antifa. And it looks like the mainstream media, the deep state, they're becoming desperate. And it looks like they're going to be using Antifa to push their agenda. How far they can push it, we don't know as of yet. But we can see they're going to make this move and they're going to support them. And they're making the case of why it's okay to fight hate with violence. Post 1863, Q put up the Bill Maher. For those who said I was way off comparing Michelle Bachmann at debate on Wednesday with Planet of the Apes. And then, of course, Q put at the bottom, at Sean Hannity, at Fox News, at The Real Roseanne. Do not let this hypocrisy stand. Fight. Much more to come. Moving on to post 1864. It's a link to Sarah Carter. Trump Tower meeting looks increasingly like a setup by Russian and Clinton operatives. And it looks like the White House, with Trump tweeting, with Sarah Carter coming out, they're dropping breadcrumbs left and right because they're laying the groundwork for what is coming. And what is coming is the declassification of pretty much everything. And they're trying to get everyone on board or just hearing about it to let it sink in. Remember, Q said that people are going to reject this. It's going to be very difficult. More people are going to come to the board for proof. They want facts. And we can see already that the groundwork is being laid right now and the information is being put out there. And those who are paying attention are seeing it. Those who are looking for it will find it. Now, if you're just looking at the mainstream media, you're going to see absolutely nothing. But I think once this comes out, people are going to start to scratch their head. People are going to say, well, wait a minute. Other people are going to completely reject it. And I think at this point, the mainstream media is going to try to, and the deep state, which is all one and the same, they're going to try to down as many channels, sites, accounts as they possibly can and push Antifa out there to cause chaos while all this is happening. And we can see once the chaos dissipates, what do you have left? The truth and facts. And this is the problem for the deep state. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.